you had two equal candidates side by side. How would you then distinguish between candidate A and candidate B?
It's probably not an answer that you're probably going to really like. One of the things I've observed in my time, if you tend to have someone coming from academia, sometimes that curiosity can be stifled because there's an intent to show what they know and their expertise. Is there a curiosity? Is there an interest? It's how people make me feel when I interact with them.
Hi there. Are you ready to learn, laugh, and leap into your pharma career journey? Today's special guest is a marketing maestro, Robin Whiteley. He's going to cover off on three things for us. Number one, how to break into the industry. Number two, what key skills to focus on. And number three, how to maintain that ever elusive work-life balance. Now, if we're meeting for the first time, my name's David Tong, and I'm the mullet of pharma YouTubers. Business at the front, party at the back. No, what I mean by that is I am a little different. Before I joined Pharma, I was a hospital pharmacist. And over the last 8 years, I've become an award-winning sales and marketer. My mission with Finding Pharma is to give you a weekly dose of grit. What I mean by that is guidance with tips and tricks, sharing some of the relationships that I've built with amazing leaders and colleagues to give you inspiration on how to build out your own career and ultimately help you transform your career in the pharmaceutical industry. So with that, let's get into it.
Hey everyone, welcome to Finding Pharma, your breath of fresh air in the pharmaceutical industry. Today we're joined by a very special guest, and I think poetic that I say breath of fresh air because he has such a rich experience in the respiratory field and extensive experience across the pharmaceutical industry. Someone whose career I'm sure is going to impress you all. Robin Whiteley, thank you for coming on the channel.
Thanks for having me, David.
And welcome.
Thank you, very good to be here, thank you.
I've done a little bit of homework on you, and over the next 15 minutes for the channel's guests, there's 6 questions I'd love to ask you. The first 2, giving them a bit of inspiration. Everyone starts their career journey somewhere, and we'd love to learn a little bit about that from you. And then the middle portion, another 2 questions just on your career advice, and I've got some guest questions for you. And then the final 2 questions, bit of fun and some interesting facts. So if I go over the rap sheet, Uni of Birmingham, Bachelor of Sports Management, so obviously an Aston Villa fan.
No, Leeds.
Work-wise, super impressive career. So 3 years at MSD as an L&D consultant, 14 years at Novartis, multiple roles there, spending time as an L&D consultant, regional sales manager, state sales manager, product manager before becoming the head of L&D, and then business unit head of respiratory, and now moving over to Viatris as head of marketing. A quick disclaimer before we start, the views expressed in this interview are solely those of myself and our guest. They do not reflect the views or official stance of our employers. Our guests have not been compensated for their participation in the interview, and any discussion is purely for educational purposes only. If I can take you back down memory lane, that first role at MSD, how did you find your way into pharma? Because you have quite a unique educational background, Bachelor of Sports Management. People probably tend to think he's going to be the next Cristiano Ronaldo player manager. And found himself into MSD. How did that come about?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I mean, you mentioned L&D there at MSD, but I was actually a rep for 2 years before that role. But very, very simple, really, is that I worked in the health and fitness industry, held various roles there. Was fortunate enough to work in professional football in the UK, and then came to Australia to sort of be a little bit closer to what I thought was probably the world's best country at sport, and to understand the reason behind that. And it's through that channel. With my own running that I met a couple of guys that I was training with, 3 guys actually specifically. One was a GP, a guy called James Harrison. He used to be the team doctor at Penrith and he's a sports medicine doctor, just retired. And then there was two other colleagues, Darren Barlow, who's at Medtronic now, and Richard Goodham, who's at MSD, who were working within the pharmaceutical industry. And I was working every hour God sends trying to manage a health and fitness facility, and they were rocking up in their Commodores, telling me about what a great day they'd had out seeing healthcare professionals, and what a great work-life balance it was, and then so that enticed me and interested me in doing that. And thankfully, having 2 people already in the industry, they were very kind to coach me and prepare me through the interview process, and fortunate enough to secure that first repping role at MSD, which is always generally the hardest first step, is to try and find an avenue in.
And early on an earlier episode, I talk about GP sales as the ultimate gateway in, and so it's really fascinating to see, even for you back then, many moons ago, although we won't give away your age.
I think it'd be quite obvious on the camera.
And then since then, You know, the man on top of the mountain, he doesn't just drop there. You've climbed through a phenomenal amount of roles. Yeah, many of the channel's audience, they're applying for their first commercial role. And so they're interested to know if you had two equal candidates, side by sides, same amount of uni, like Bachelor of Commerce, etc. How would you then distinguish between candidate A and candidate B, given an equal sort of academic background?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's probably not an answer that you're probably going to really like, but it's how people make me feel when I interact with them. Is a lot of it. Is there a curiosity? Is there an interest? One of the things I've observed in my time working in pharmaceuticals is that you know, this advent of MSLs and hospital specialty reps, and what's the difference and what's the same. And one of the things I've always observed is if you tend to have someone coming from academia, sometimes that curiosity can be stifled because there's an intent to show what they know and their expertise rather than a curiosity to understand the person or the situation that you sat across from. And I think how I would decide between those two candidates is what sort of questions did they ask? What was their curiosity? Were they clear on what their strengths were, but at the same time where their opportunities are? Because none of us are perfect.
Yeah.
Those are the sort of things that how I benchmark people in my mind.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's really great for the audience to understand that curiosity, question asking. I think that interpersonal skill as well is what I'm hearing is
absolutely
super important.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. And you know, when I went over the rap sheet, you have such extensive experience in the L&D space. As an expert in the L&D space, what is one skill that you think people should invest more in, but is often overlooked? And I suppose building on that, you know, is it interpersonal skills? Yeah, is there one that you?
I think, and it's a bit linked to my previous answer. It's asking questions with the intent to understand, not to reply. And I think we preach that sort of principle and ethos when we talk about effective communication skills, but it's actually a tremendously difficult thing to do, to be truly in the hands of the person who sat from you, particularly if you're selling to a GP, a specialist. Unashamedly, you have an agenda, but that to be able to influence someone, they've got to trust you. You've got to show that you care about what it is that they do, the challenges and problems they're finding with patients, etc. And it's only off that foundation that you can really have a meaningful partnership. Which, when the job and this industry is done well, it's a partnership. It's not transactional. And that intent to sort of understand and be curious lays at the foundation of that. And I think that's something sometimes people get fixated on, telling you what I know, delivering this selling message, a stream of words, rather than asking questions which I don't necessarily know what the answer is going to be.
Yeah.
And being comfortable with that sort of ambiguity and uncertainty.
Yeah. Can I ask, just to build on that, that curiosity, that understanding, are there any particular resources, books, podcasts that you've potentially come across recently or in the past that you might recommend to the audience where they can build that muscle?
Yeah, it's a great challenge and a great question, David. Firstly, it's an incredibly valuable and rare skill. And I always wonder you mentioned my L&D background, when you used to sort of put a problem within the execution of the sales team and you're diagnosing what the root cause of the problem was. Generally, most problems or poor execution with the sales team could be sort of traced back to one source, and that is people generally aren't comfortable asking broad questions or questions they don't know the answers to if they don't know the topic that they're talking about. And so one of the things that I think that lays the foundation to have that capability is to make sure you're as well informed, as well read, as well researched into the therapeutic area or the lives of the person that sat across from you, whether it's a pharmacist, a GP, a specialist, whoever it is, so that you feel comfortable that you're informed enough to go wherever that conversation might go. And that's just, again, being a scholar of your therapeutic area. I think, and then sometimes I think that's skirted over.
Brilliant advice, and appreciate that. Another question, a lot of the audience are keen to know, and this has come from Cam in Sydney. How do you keep up with industry trends and developments? There's the advent of AI. Yeah, how do you keep abreast of all these new advancements?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was quite ashamed by some of the things you've just shared with me over lunch, David. The insight. The tabloid. In terms of online media that I stay connected with, Pharma in Focus is still probably my go-to. It's digestible. It's easy to read. It's updated twice a day. It tends to cover the main areas of interest. I subscribe to Pharma as well, which again daily, you get the updates. But also, again, it again comes back to the curiosity, is that when, you know, for instance, both you and I were at APP this weekend, it's talking to people and inquiring and exploring and being interested in people. I actually sat at breakfast at the hotel on the morning of APP, and there was a table of 4, and I was sat on one side and there was a stranger sat to the right. And 9 times out of 10, you just sit there, have breakfast and not say a word. And as I've become more middle-aged, I'm more interested in talking to people. And I got talking to this gentleman, Nigel Pollard was his name, and he's the chair of the board for a number of healthcare companies, you know, had 35, 40 years experience in the healthcare industry, English as well, so there was a connection there. But I had a most wonderful conversation with him for 35, 40 minutes. He's got an office over here at Barangaroo, and we're going to catch up. And so, again, he's taking those opportunities and being curious and speaking to people rather than just letting those opportunities pass by. But fierce Pharma in focus, they tend to be the online engagements, but yeah, keeping engaged and communicative with people in the
face-to-face communication. And you embody exactly what you say. You talk the talk and you walk the walk. You're curious, like you do reach out to strangers, and you never know where that may lead you. So
exactly
again,
right.
Curiosity is shining bright at me. Now, what a lot of people probably don't know about you, or maybe they do, is you are an elite level athlete. You run marathons. You've been doing it for 30, 40 years. I do not know how you keep your body okay. And yeah, like, what's the secret? How do you work your training schedule into such a busy work schedule?
Yeah, great question. And thank you for describing me as elite. I really appreciate that, by the way.
He was almost an Olympian, or was.
No, I wasn't. I never made the Olympics, but it's a very simple answer, really, and it's a mindset thing. Is that for me, running and competing was a priority in my life, so I made it a priority in my life. And by that, how did that manifest itself? Is that every night when I go to bed, the first thing that I'd be thinking about is when am I running, when am I training tomorrow. And generally, as we've discussed today, morning is a time that you can train and commit to something, because you're not subject to the vagaries of distractions that invariably come during the course of the day. So I was recently interviewed for an article in the Australian Financial Review, and I can't remember the question, but one of the things, when I managed the Central Coast in Newcastle for a number of years, and so the question was, you know, how did I manage that territory with the vagaries of travel, because I'd be driving up to Newcastle, and what I used to do was to leave home at 5 o'clock in the morning, pull in on the side of the freeway somewhere between here and Newcastle, you know, invariably it was Glenmouth Valley or Gosford, run, train. I'd have 2 buckets of water in the car, bucket shower, and then get changed on the side of the road, and then drive on to Newcastle and have, you know, be there by 8:15, do the full field day, come home, and fit it in that way. So my answer is you prioritise what you find important, and mornings really, there's never an excuse. There's no excuse not to get up an hour early if you need to get up an hour earlier, however hard and difficult that may be. And you know, that's the way I've always addressed it.
Oh my God, Robin, you're putting us to shame. That dedication, insane. But yeah, what I hear is early bird gets the worm, and if you really want it, you'll make it happen.
Exactly right.
And like, I do have a few friends who are competing for marathons. Any tips for them? Because I know it's quite taxing on the body, so I'm like super impressed you've done it for so long.
Yeah, I mean, people. I mean, it's taxing on the body, but I mean, as you get older, you've got to spend as much time in the gym as you do running to get the body ready to do the work. I mean, I'm thankful that I'm 50. I'm still running, I'm still competing, although I'm getting slower every year. But the body, you know, yes, you have aches and pains, but it's probably better than what it was in the 20s and 30s, to be honest.
Oh, wow.
In terms of injuries and what have you, and that's just having to do more stuff in the gym, maintenance, stretching, hot and cold water, all that sort of stuff.
Oh my God, yeah. Amazing. Some biohacking there for the audience to read into. On behalf of them and myself, we really appreciate you making time for this. So super grateful. And if there are any follow-up questions, I hope you don't mind me sending them your way.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Always happy to help in any way I can.
Wow, what a run that was. I told Robin he had 15 minutes for the interview, and of course, as every good runner does, he smashed it out the park with a time of 13 minutes and 42 seconds. Well done, Robin. Before you dash, if you found that chat valuable, you learned something, hit that subscribe button like you'd run through the finish line of a marathon. Please also share this video with your fellow career runners, because just like a 6 a.m. run club, the journey is better with friends. Subscribing not only keeps you in the loop with upcoming epic content, but it also gives you insider tips on how to pace your career over the long haul. So hit subscribe, share the love, and let's keep running this race together.